People often talk about the greatest leaders in history, those who rise to power and build empires that last for generations, but no matter how strong they seem, time always moves forwards, and even the greatest systems eventually come to an end. To me, that's just as interesting. So that got me wondering, who was the last shogun of Japan?
Hello, I'm Rustage. I'm in the middle of this blistering heat right now because I love exploring places and learning about history whilst I do so.
I'm going to be exploring different places in and around Tokyo over the next few days.
Because this is the story of Tokugawa Yoshinobu, who is the last ever shogun and sort of the final shogun of the Edo period before the Meiji Restoration.
But firstly, what even is a shogun?
In simple terms, the shogun was the military ruler of the country. Even though the emperor officially held the top title, the shogun had all of the power. He controlled the armies, he controlled the government, he controlled the day-by-day decisions, and had done so for hundreds of years. When we talk about the shogun, we really are talking about the unofficial, most powerful man in Japan. The Tokugawa line of shoguns started in the early 1600s when Tokugawa Ieyasu won a sort of pseudo-civil war to become the most powerful man in the country, and Yoshinobu is the end of that long line. As a side note, there is a book by James Clavell called Shogun, which kind of semi-details Tokugawa's rise, and now I think there's a TV show about it. It's very good, I do recommend it. It's a bit of a historical fiction, so there might be some details that aren't entirely true to reality, but I think it gives you a good general gist of how the whole thing played out. When he became shogun officially, he established a new base of government here. Then it was called Edo, but now it is called Tokyo, and that marked the beginning of a 250-year-old reign of stability, which is commonly known as the Edo period, which Yoshinobu marks the end of.
To start my journey, I wanted to explore the city where Yoshinobu grew up, and that meant taking a train out of Tokyo. This was the limited express Hitachi service to Mito, which takes just over an hour from Ueno station. I bought myself a beef sukiyaki lunchbox at the station and took a moment to enjoy the journey. If you know me, you know I'm a train enjoyer, and Japanese trains are incredible. Honestly, if you're ever in Japan, I recommend squeezing a long-distance train journey into your itinerary somewhere, as not only is the journey enjoyable, but a lot of Japan's best places to visit are situated outside the major cities. Becoming shogun isn't as simple as, let's say, a European monarchy where it just passes on to the next oldest son. Shoguns are usually nominated by the previous shogun or decided by other people in positions of power. At the time, there were three main branch families of the Tokugawa clan whose members were eligible to become shogun, and Yoshinobu came from one of them. He was born as in Edo, but when he was just 7 months old, he was sent here to Mito, where he would be raised and educated.
I'm currently walking from the station over there in Mito, and I'm walking up this to head to the school that Yoshinobu would have been educated in. There's not that many tourists around here. There might be once I get to the school itself, so I don't feel too uncomfortable talking. So here I am. I've been told I'm allowed to film, which is good. There's one room I'm not allowed to film in apparently, but outside of that, I'm perfectly good to film, which is great, which means I'm not being a rude foreigner by doing this video, which is awesome. This is the Kodokan, founded in 1841. It was actually built by Yoshinobu's father himself, Tokugawa Nariaki. Nariaki believed that Japan needed strong and capable leaders. At this time in Japan, there was a lot of foreign tensions. The Americans, the Europeans were all doing trading and spreading their westerly ways, and Nariaki, he wasn't happy about all that. He was coming up with plans and ways to essentially expel the foreigners or restore traditional Japanese ways, and this school was kind of part of that initiative. Yoshinobu, the man in question, spent quite a lot of his early life here, being educated, not just in reading and writing, but history and politics and strategy and philosophy, everything you need to be a capable man in a position of political power here at the end of the Edo period in Japan. They were taught how to carry themselves, how to lead, how to display discipline and responsibility. Two things I am terrible at. I would not survive in these days. I would get expelled. You would not see me as shogun, despite my song saying otherwise.
I spent the next hour or so walking around the school itself. It's been very well preserved and there's lots of interesting nooks and crannies to look at.
Well, this is a traditional Japanese toilet. To think Yoshinobu would have shat here. It's really empty here as well. So many tourist sites in Tokyo and Kyoto and other big places in Japan are so full of people. And I feel like Japan has so many cool places to visit that are not that far away from Tokyo. This is about an hour on the train and it's completely empty. To be fair, like there's a checklist of all the best sites you gotta see and people always do them. But I feel like if you come to Japan, you should spend at least a day going somewhere that's more niche and obscure, even if you've not heard of it before. Just do some of your own research and you could find something cool like this. It only costs 400 yen. That's 2 fucking buckaroonies. This room here that we're in right now served as a space for the feudal lords to read the laws children to study, and the last shogun of the Edo period, Tokugawa Yoshinobu, studied here. Right here, he would have studied. And this is where he would have learnt everything he knew. As a child, Yoshinobu was not expected to become shogun. I mean, he was just one of many. However, because of his intelligence and his capability, he was adopted into another branch of the Tokugawa family, the Hitotsubashi house. This is the Nagamochi chest. These were traditionally used for storing and transporting clothing and other personal belongings. It's like an olden suitcase. I mean, it looks inconvenient, but I'm sure they put it on something and they didn't just carry it on their backs. But this was also used by Yoshinobu Tokugawa, as it says down there. This is really cool. This is the Daini Honshi. It's the history of Great Japan, as they call it. It's a monumental historical work documenting the history of Japan's emperors, from Emperor Jinmu to Emperor Go-Komatsu. I think it's like 230 years, maybe even more, of just straight history in all of these books. It describes the lives of princes and empresses and distinguished retainers and stuff like that. And I think that's really cool. Some histories we don't know that much about because we don't have people writing it down at the time. So having this historical document, incredible. I think it's incredible. It was one of the closest lines to the ruling family, and it really marked him as a potential candidate for serious future leadership. This was a move that his father really pushed for at the time, but that still didn't mean he was going to become shogun. That came later. I'm now in Kadaikuin Park, and this over here is Lake Senba, which is very cool. I accidentally slept in today because I've been doing a whole lot these past few days. I got here at about 3 p.m. and now it's 5 and it's getting cloudy, it's getting dark, and it's starting to rain a little bit. So the conditions are not ideal, but we're out here anyway, we're still here. There's a reason why I've come to this park. It's to see a statue of Tokugawa Yoshinobu as a child with his father, and I think that'd be a really cool thing to stand by and talk a little bit more about Yoshinobu's rise to becoming shogun. Oh my god! What is a duck? This is very cool. For those of you who don't know, I have an app called the Merlin Bird app where I can keep track of all the different types of birds I've seen whilst traveling, and I'm trying to get to 100 before the end of this year. So I'm going to take a picture of this swan, and I put a picture in the app like this, and it's a rare black swan. Oh my god. So this is like a little walkway between a river and a lake. This walk it's going to be like 30 minutes before I get to where I need to go. I see it, it's right over there, but there's construction going on this bridge, so I think I have to go around. It seems like it's in a closed off area. They've like closed up. Here's the statue, but I can't get any closer to it. I think it's really just my luck that I've traveled all this way and the area where the statue is under construction, is like a construction site that I'm not allowed in. This is the closest I can get. So there it is off there. And that is Yoshinobu Tokugawa and his father teaching him how to be a politician, essentially.
During this time period, Japan was under increasing pressure from foreign powers, and the government was struggling to respond.
At the same time as that, there was internal divisions that were growing throughout the country. There's a lot of people supporting the shogunate, but there were others pushing to restore the power of the emperor, thinking that's what was needed to repel the foreigners.
The turning point came in 1858 after the death of the 13th shogun.
Because he hadn't chosen an heir, there was no set heir in place, there was a political struggle to become the next shogun, and at the time Yoshinobu was part of that mixture. He was one of the potential candidates.
Conservative leaders favoured the 12-year-old Yoshitomi, who later became Iemochi, because they believed he'd be much easier to control, whereas Yoshinobu was considered too mature, intelligent and strong-willed to be a figurehead.
He lost that power struggle. This sort of led to a period of political persecution called the Ansei Purge.
The Ansei Purge is where many Yoshinobu supporters and other political critics were arrested, removed from power, sometimes even executed. The goal was to eliminate anyone who challenged the shogunate's authority or opposed its decisions.
Yoshinobu, though, despite being passed over and a member of the opposing party, he still remained an important political figure. And over the next few years, Japan's political situation worsened. Foreign powers demanded more access, internal unrest grew, and ultimately the confidence in the shogunate weakened. The thing is, as these problems sort of intensified, Yoshinobu's popularity grew. And then all of a sudden, the 14th shogun, Tokugawa Iemochi, died at the age of 20.
With the government in crisis and very few strong candidates available, Yoshinobu was chosen as the natural successor, becoming the 15th and final shogun of Japan.
When Yoshinobu stepped into the role of shogun, he was stepping into a role that was a tiny bit unstable.
From the very start, he tried to fix a system that was already falling apart.
He tried to strengthen central control, he improved administrative decisions.
He brought in foreign experts even, to help build factories, improve weapons and develop a stronger navy and military.
But a lot of these things came far too late.
The seeds of dissent were already there. Powerful groups from regions like Satsuma and Chosu formed an alliance and pushed for full control to be returned to the emperor. At first, there was an attempt at compromise. Some leaders suggested that Yoshinobu step down as shogun but still remain influential in a new shared government, and in November 1867, Yoshinobu agreed. He officially resigned and handed power back to the emperor. Yoshinobu was only shogun for 1 year. But things didn't stop there.
Many of his political rivals wanted to completely eliminate the Tokugawa influence. They pushed for a full restoration of imperial rule and not just a shared government.
They secretly obtained an imperial edict, which later turned out to be a forgery, calling for the use of force against Yoshinobu, and moved a massive number of Satsuma and Chosu troops into Kyoto, which pushed the situation towards open conflict. Yoshinobu protested this, of course, and sent forces towards Kyoto, but when they arrived, they were attacked. This incident led to the Battle of Toba Fushimi, the first major battle of the Boshin War. Even though his army was larger, Yoshinobu made a sudden and unexpected decision. Upon realizing that the enemy forces raised the imperial banner, he abandoned the battlefield and retreated back to Edo, effectively leaving his army behind. From that point on, the fight quickly lost momentum. Yoshinobu placed himself under house arrest and signaled that he would submit to the emperor's authority. Soon after, a peaceful agreement was reached. Edo Castle, the center of Tokugawa power, was handed over without a fight in 1868, sparing the city from all-out war. And just like that, after more than 250 years of rule, the Tokugawa shogunate came to a complete end.
And here we are. This is the grave of Tokugawa Yoshinobu. I'm currently by the grave of Yoshinobu Tokugawa. I don't want to get any closer because obviously it's quite a popular tourist location, especially for locals it seems, and there's a couple of tour guides coming through and they're talking over there, and obviously I don't want to get up on there, so I'm a little bit out of the way here. But I wanted to come here and sort of talk about the sort of end of Yoshinobu's life. After he stepped down, he was placed under house arrest for a little while. It obviously makes a lot of sense with the way that he kind of stepped down and resigned from the conflict, but he wasn't exiled or punished for being the previous ruler. If you think about history, a lot of the times when there'd be a big change in government, usually that involves the sort of violent killing of the previous leader, or at least the imprisonment of the previous leader, so their factions can't rise up again in rebellion against whatever the new government might be. But Yoshinobu, not only was he only briefly put under house arrest and then let go to live a regular life, but even later in his life he was given a noble title from the emperor. A kind of symbolic gesture maybe, but it really showcased that he was still part of the fabric of Japanese political society despite no longer being shogun. In the sort of years that followed his retirement, he lived a very, very different kind of life. He essentially just became a regular civilian. He went from being one of the most powerful men in all of Japan to just being some bloke who loves cycling. He picked up so many hobbies. He got really into photography. So this was like the turn of the 20th century. So photography was becoming this big thing that was happening. And he loved photography and he got into doing it. And I think he lived through an era of great change. During his lifetime, and especially into his old age, he got to see how the complete landscape of Japanese society changed during the Meiji Restoration. This is not just the grave of the last shogun, but a man that kind of stood at a turning point in history between the old Edo period of Japan to the turn of the Meiji Restoration. Many leaders in history, despite clearly being on the losing side, bitterly cling to power. They're desperately trying to hold on to what they feel makes their identity, despite the potential consequences of millions dying or making the country worse in the process of dragging out these long conflicts of power struggles. You can really respect the sort of person that realizes how the tides are changing and sees that it would be better for the country to step aside and let things change as for what he saw was the better, even if it meant giving up his power. Ultimately, I think that's pretty cool. I hope you enjoyed this video. This is sort of my first time trying to do something like this, and I know it's quite an oversimplification of a lot of nuanced and complicated Japanese historical points. This is not meant to be the be-all, end-all documentary on Yoshinobu's life. It's just sort of my experience of exploring Japan and learning about him, and then telling you guys what I've learnt. If you want to see more sort of videos like this, let me know, because I want to do some in England and Europe and kind of all over the world, and I'm sure they'll get better as well if you've watched this and you're like, this was shit.